Paula Gordy is a person who knows well what patient complaints are all about and successes, and she knows the real deal. And Paula, thanks for joining. We want to thank again our sponsor for the event, Curaleaf. And it's brands like Curaleaf that just keep pushing forward.
Hey, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. I am honored to be able to talk to you a little bit about, what patients experience when they are coming into a dispensary. Working at Curaleaf New Jersey, Curaleaf being a multi-state organization in which we empower our patients to utilize cannabis with confidence. It feels like a gift every single day, every time that I'm there. And so it's interesting when you talk about states like Oklahoma and when you compare something, that system, to what we experience here in New Jersey. Prior to 2018, when Governor Murphy came on board, we had a very conservative administration and it was extremely difficult to get into the program. We had something like 13 qualifying conditions. A qualifying condition is a condition that is identified as one that the governing body feels cannabis can help treat, assist in relieving symptoms. And so Governor Murphy came on board. We had between 16 and 17,000 patients. That was in 2018. Today, July or August 2020, we now have over 81,000 patients, and that greatly was influenced by the number of qualifying conditions that we added, or the qualifying conditions that we added that so many people deal with, that so many people experience. Those conditions that we added to the list of qualifying conditions is anxiety. That was huge. Anxiety is something that so many people experience, especially in the midst of what is going on in the universe right now. But prior to that, just thinking about life and all that is involved with life, anxiety was one that was added. Chronic pain was not originally, or chronic pain related to musculoskeletal disorders and chronic pain related to visceral origins was not an original qualifying condition. That was added. Tourette syndrome was added. PTSD is now a qualifying condition in New Jersey. Dysmenorrhea was not always a qualifying condition. That's painful menstrual cycles for women. That wasn't always a qualifying condition. Opioid use disorder was not always a qualifying condition. So when we saw those conditions be added to the list, we did see an amazing increase in the number of individuals who sought cannabis as medicine in the state of New Jersey. And as one who believes that, cannabis is a plant that can relieve so many different conditions. I look at cannabis as one of nature's supplements for us. I looked at it as a major win-win for New Jersey's residents.
And as far as other states, being in comparison, I think it's helpful to contrast, because in doing so, I think you're educating or updating too what's going on in your world. You mentioned a big one, opioids.
Yeah.
What's your personal experience, and is there any more recent updates out of New Jersey? Because every state is dealing with this in their own way in some respects, but they're all suffering universally the same.
Sure. So I can certainly share some anecdotal information or anecdotal stories. Being a patient consultant in the dispensary, we have several patients that come in with that condition, opioid use disorder, and they'll walk into the dispensary. Some have already started to wean themselves off of opioids. Some are still in the midst of opioid use and are very excited to utilize cannabis to assist in their process of getting opioids out of their life. I would say that 90% of those who have opioid use disorder as their qualifying condition want nothing more than to kick opioids out the door. That is their goal. They'll come into the dispensary and they'll say, yes, I'm addicted to opioids. I feel like I'm weaning myself off. Or for those who are still in the midst of the struggle, the one thing that they want is to no longer have to take another opioid. I would say that within 7 or 8 months of seeing someone who walked in, who was still actively using opioids, that we are seeing an amazing response in their ability to be using them at least 50% less, if not, if not 75% less. That, again, huge win-win for the patient. All of this is helping individuals understand how cannabis is such personalized medicine. And when you are able to hone in on your response, when you are able to hone in on, what works well for you and how it works well for you, you tend to see pretty great response. And that's very exciting. It's part of the reason why all of us who work at Curaleaf or any dispensary get excited to walk in, regardless to how you feel, whether you're tired or not.
So put us on the other side of that
Sure.
vantage point, because that's helpful, Paula, as far as setting it up for my next question, which is uh, all walks of life, all age types, people of all persuasions. What do you say? What's the profile of the medical cannabis patient? Is there one? How is it
Right.
changing?
And so that profile is it's so heterogeneous. You have a little bit of everyone as a medical marijuana patient. When I first started working at the dispensary, and that was in 2017, again, remember, we had a much more restricted program. That being said, I would say, and I can't give you exact precise numbers, but most of our patients were dealing with, ailments that were so debilitating they may not be able to move or function. Their activities of daily living were compromised to the point where, it was difficult for them to even walk into the dispensary. Today, I would still say that more than half of our population, at least 60% of our population, are middle-aged or older. We have quite a few patients who enter the program. They have used cannabis before, but they still feel like a newbie, for a lack of better words, because the last time they used cannabis, they were young, in their 20s or adolescents, and may or may not have had a positive experience. And so there are some patients, or a lot of patients, that still deal with some reluctance because they can remember those days when they used it recreationally and overconsumed, went above their threshold, not knowingly, because we didn't know a lot about the science of cannabis years ago. And so, walk into the dispensary and or have had, definitely had some consultation with their physician, their qualifying physician, and have reluctance. But our goal always is to assure them, one, you are empowered to do this. Two, it's going to take a little bit of work. We always encourage everyone to journal. And at the end of the day, we want everyone you have to mentally be ready and or prepared to go on the journey. So getting back to the question, we do still have more than half of our patients that are middle-aged or older. But again, once we saw those additional qualifying conditions, then that's when you saw the myriad of additional other people joining the program. Why?
Talk about that, as far as we talk about anxiety as if it's
Yeah,
one word, but I would say there must be an enormous, let's say, a spectrum, right, of
yeah,
what really could be called by, let's say, patients,
yeah.
as anxiety, but it could be really very intense, or maybe back to sleeping, right?
Well,
Part of a sleeping kind of a anxiety.
sure. And here's the thing, it's still a requirement for anyone in the state of New Jersey to have a diagnosis from a physician. And so you can't just walk off the street and say, I have anxiety and I want to come into the dispensary and purchase medicine. You had to have had relationship with a physician who can attest to the fact that your anxiety is having an impact on your life in a way that it can be having an impact on your activities of daily living. It could be having an impact on your ability to function. And so, with that medical attestation, or with the attestation from the medical practitioner, we can't question that. But when the medical practitioner has deemed it something that is impacting that individual's ability to do what they need to do to be productive in their eyes, that's essentially, you know, all that's necessary. And there is a myriad of things, because everybody is different, right? Something that may create anxiety in you might not create anxiety in me, and or vice versa. That's to the eye of the medical practitioner and the patient. And so as long as that attestation is there, then we talk to the patient, We help them understand, what are your symptoms? What are your triggers? And we help them understand everything that we carry and truly, truly walk them through a path to help them hone in on what regimens and or what products, more importantly, would be more effective for them.
I want to continue on that path, meaning the patient path and
Sure.
experience, because unpacking that, I think, helps people understand and empathize maybe more with what is in front of you every day. Adjunct or alternative, or is it a combination? It's both.
Yeah, I believe it's a combination. It's definitely a combination. Again, going back to the fundamental, with cannabis being very personalized medicine, and the work of what we do is really empowering the patient to develop that relationship with the plant and everything that is made from the plant, to help them deal with their symptoms. Definitely a combination. What happens, is, of course, you talked about the recommendation or the decreases in the amount that people are filling in their recommendation. With people really developing that relationship and honing in on their sweet spot, right? They understand that microdosing is really, really helping them in their treatment. And that, you don't, oftentimes, most of the times, less is more. So that's a victory. That means that people really are using cannabis with the intention to deal with their symptoms in a way that they're able to continue to move about, go to work, take care of home, take care of the children, take care of the farm, do whatever they need to do. I think it's a testament to individuals really, really honing in on what is right for them and understanding and really realizing through their experience that less is more. So.
What about the example of, I guess, when you mentioned the term microdosing or titration over a long period of time, define microdosing.
Sure. I define microdose as, for each individual, the minimum viable dose necessary for you to get the relief that you're looking for. Okay? The minimum viable dose necessary to get the relief that you're looking for. And so that is where every person has to start on the journey. Oftentimes, people have to retrain themselves. If someone has used cannabis for a period of time, they may need to retrain how they use cannabis when they're using it as medicine. And so, it's always starting off with, all right, being in that safe environment, your mind and your setting, your set and your setting are so important. Be in that safe environment, have a clear mind, have a journal. Doesn't matter what the journal looks like. Really, from start to finish, write down, what are you using? How much are you using? How are you administering it to yourself? Are you inhaling through smoking? Are you inhaling through dryer vaporization? Are you inhaling through a vape cartridge? Are you using a sublingual? Whatever you're using, what dosage did you take? Was it 1 puff, 2 puffs? Was it a quarter of a lozenge? Was it, a half of a milliliter of tincture? Jotting that down, starting off with the smallest amount that you can potentially get into your system. Use that as your benchmark, titrate up as you are assessing over a period of hours how the medicine is making you feel. That's just one tactic that patients find a lot of success in, not only in continuing and figuring out the regimens that's great for them, but in their ongoing relationship with their medical practitioner, really being able to say, this is what I did, this is how I did it, this is how I responded, this was good, this wasn't so good, and being able to make adjustments. So the smallest amount necessary to get the relief that you're looking for. That's the microdose definition.
How do you advise or think about going into choosing what form, from flower to some other non-flower form?
The first step that myself and any of my colleagues take when we are working with a patient is to really assess to see what they're comfortable with. First off, of course, we do a whole range of education based on their level of knowledge or the lack thereof. And we have to start off with those methods that the patient themselves is comfortable with. I am not going to spend time talking to you about inhalation if you say to me, no way, no, not in this lifetime am I using my lungs to get this medicine into my system. No problem. So we start off with the patient. What are you comfortable with? What do you know? Assess that. And based on where they are is where we help them understand how we can help them, what we have to offer, and that's where we start. we always start with the patient. Using cannabis as medicine is patient-centric. It has to be centered around the patient. There is no there's not one piece of the pie that fits everybody, as we know.
Well, here on the Global Cannabis Research Summit, which we're going to have another section coming up after 2 p.m. Eastern time with 3 more speakers, but among those, we'll get into some maybe tools that will help patients and practitioners like you in using DNA as another set of sort of markers, or trying to stratify someone, right, in terms of where do they even fall on some, just again, to give you something to stratify and start that journey, right?
I look forward to that. I mean, I do look forward to the day when we have so much science. We can actually look at things, and we can actually acquire other types of certifications and things like that based on things like DNA markers, or based on a myriad of other elements that can show you some response, in that individual body. We'll get there. I know we will. We'll get there.
What do you think about today, though? Again, you're in New Jersey in this particular medical cannabis market. How do you break down the top 3 forms of, what people are consuming? Flower first, is that still, no matter what, the number one, whether it's vaping or combustible?
And that's a great question. I would definitely, so in the New Jersey market, you definitely see an increase in concentrates such as vape cartridges. However, I would still say that the majority of the population is always still saying, where is the flower? I want the flower. I want the flower. People are drawn to what they know. People are drawn to understanding that there's lots of molecules in that plant, in the bud, and all of those molecules are binding with my internal endocannabinoid system to help me feel better. But for discretion's sake, there is a huge increase in individuals seeking concentrated products. For those who still want to inhale, yes, vape cartridges, sky high. People love vape cartridges. They're odorless. They're easy to use. People don't necessarily know that, you're using cannabis as medicine. Let's be honest. Many people don't own their homes. They may live in an apartment complex where, using cannabis, combusting it will tell on them in a way that they can lose their housing. So discrete methods are sublinguals are extremely popular in the state of New Jersey. We see so many patients that want lozenges that they can use sublingually, and tinctures. Curaleaf, we carry all of that. But yes, so I would say flower, cartridges, and sublinguals are the leading methods that people are utilizing to use cannabis as medicine. Patients are always also looking at what other states have to offer. I work at Curaleaf New Jersey. There's only one Curaleaf in New Jersey. But if I look at the offering in Massachusetts that Curaleaf has, or the offering that they have in Florida, totally different state regulations. Patients see that and they seek those things, but we help them understand within the regulations of what we can sell here in New Jersey. We have, what we are able to offer.
Paula, if you could wave your magic wand first, let's say, for all the federal complication in getting science done, right, around cannabis here in the U.S., but if you had another wave of the wand to think about, or with a scientific audience, suggest or encourage the kinds of research, the kinds of questions, therefore trials, studies people should be thinking about, anything come to mind? How would you direct the science crowd if you were head of NIH?
So I'm gonna make fun out of this. I don't know if anyone's ever watched the Flintstones. You remember Mr. Gazoo?
Oh, I
green,
totally.
Right? Remember the little green Martian who made magical things happen for Fred and Barney? So if Mr. Gazoo was here, and he was going to grant us some wishes on the cannabis space, the first thing that I would ask Mr. Gazoo to do is clearly remove it from Schedule 1, because that in and of itself is going to make it possible for us to do a lot more. So that's the first thing. Gazoo is going to give us 3 things, okay? So the first thing, remove it from Schedule 1. The second thing, just as I can, as a public health administrator, seek, funding for research on just about anything with the NIH or with the, CDC or whatever, we need to have the ability to do the same thing. Research is what it is. Individuals, they come together and they say, this is a hypothesis that I have based on anecdotes, based on what we have been doing. we should have the flexibility to do it. So let's deschedule it and let's have that myriad of opportunity to be able to take a thought, take a hypothesis, and to really be able to research it based on some of the anecdotal things that we do have. And we have a lot of anecdotal evidence. We also have other evidence. We do have research from around the world on cannabis, but to be able to take it and expand upon it. And the third thing is just that, the stigma of cannabis be eliminated, just like that. It's Mr. Gazoo. Remember, he can make it happen.
A couple of questions that came in online where I think this ties in well. One, again, because it's around New Jersey, thoughts about home delivery and home grow as it sort of is in the mix. What are your thoughts?
So home delivery is something that dispensaries are working on. Curaleaf New Jersey is one of them. I would say I can't put a timeline out there, so I'm not going to go there. But very soon we will see home delivery, because that was something that was written into the legislation in July of 2019. Of course, COVID slowed things down a little bit, but we do have a dispensary in the north that's doing home delivery, and we have 3 or 4, Curaleaf New Jersey being one, that is moving in that direction. Literally, logistics are being worked out, and we'll be seeing that soon. It's essential, especially now, as fewer people are navigating the land based on COVID-19. So home delivery is essential. It truly is. Home grow, personally, I don't think that anyone should. While legislatively we can't, I think that it would be a great opportunity for patients to have that option to do some home grow. I do think that patients would still continue to utilize dispensaries, because where you would have a deficit at home, if you had a deficit in your home grow, you could always go to the dispensary and get regulated medicine. But why not have the option? Legislatively, we're not there. Who knows when we'll get there? But I personally believe that, home grow would be a great option for patients.
And Nick asked online a question about any guess on patients in your world, in your experience, that just don't respond to cannabinoids, right? Again, it's personalized, but
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's very real. I've seen that. I've experienced it. And so, when that does happen, we go through a myriad of elements to see if a different dose, if a different product, if a different delivery method can be helpful. And there is a fraction of individuals that don't respond well. When that does happen, just as I would consult with any patient, it's so essential that you stay connected to your medical practitioner, so that together you can make sound decisions on what you chose to do and or any other alternatives. It happens. It is real. Cannabis is personalized medicine. It is not a panacea, and every single person on the planet is not going to have a positive response. And so when that does happen, it's important that we tune into that just as well and help that patient use their personal empowerment to work with their practitioner to figure out where their next step is in the treatment of their conditions.
Well, on that note, we'll wrap up and say great appreciation for trailblazing brands and people, right, like you, Paula, who are serving patients.